In this video, I'm going to introduce the idea of the Enum keyword. So Enum stands for enumeration, and maybe you've seen these in other programming languages. The main idea is that an enumeration variable is a variable that can only store one element of a specific set of things. If you just glance down at the end there, you can actually see an example of days of the week, right? So maybe we have a variable, and that variable is supposed to hold what day it is. Well, if I have an enumeration, then I can specify, oh, it should be Monday through Sunday or something like that. It gives me a way basically to constrain a variable to contain only certain things. Now, you've probably already used enumerations in other languages, like for example, Java. The enumerations in C will end up being a little bit different. The reason they're a little bit different in C is because in C, they're basically just an integer behind the scenes, and they can be manipulated just like an integer can. They're not type safe. So even though we have these little names, right, we can do stuff like, oh, day equal Monday or day equal Tuesday. The problem is we can do other things. We can do basically other operations that maybe could be performed on an integer variable, because that's how C is implementing an enumeration behind the scenes. On the next slide, we'll go into a little bit more detail. For now, let's take a look at the specific examples that are here. So first, you can see I have my example 1. In my example 1, I'm creating a new enumeration for Boolean. And so what we're saying there is that, okay, I have this Boolean type, and inside of that, I have two possible values, false or true. And now you can see in the body of my main there, I have an enum boolean x variable, right? So that x is the name of the variable. Its type is enum boolean. It's actually two words there, which I know is maybe a new thing. Instead of having maybe just one word for a type, we actually have two things there. Because it's not just a boolean, it's an enum boolean, right? We're creating that enumeration behind the scenes. Now, that whole thing is being set equal to false, right? And false probably shouldn't really be shown in blue here. I think it automatically highlighted that. False is simply a member of the enumeration, right? So that's what the value it's currently set to. And so you can see in there, right, then we have int counter equal 5. That's fine, it's normal code. And then we have here x equal true. So there we have our x enumeration variable, and we're comparing it to an element of the enumeration. And so if it happens to match that element, right, if it is true, then it runs that code to increment the counter. Otherwise, it's false. Presumably it's false, and then it would not do anything. So this is the basic usage of an enum, right? So we're adding a new type. Now, there's a second example here. This is another way basically to declare enumerations. By default, we only have to put in what are the possible values for that enumeration. But if we want, we can actually, because they're integers behind the scenes, we can assign numbers to each of those different members of the enumeration. So in this case, we're setting sun equal to 0. We can do something like, oh, Monday equal 10, right? We can do whatever we want. We can set this equal to numbers. And that's potentially useful in some applications because all of a sudden you have a little bit more information associated with an enumeration member, right? So you can have, special IDs behind the scenes or something. Now, when you do something like sun equals 0, what will actually happen is it'll start counting or numbering up from there. So Monday will actually be set equal to 1, Tuesday will be set equal to 2, Wednesday will be set equal to 3, and so on. So we'll start counting them up. As a best practice, usually people have the first element in their enum set equal to 0, just so you know for sure that it's going to start at 0 and count up all the way. All right, so that's the basic idea of enumerations. So we're allowed to pick one element from a set and store it into a variable. So in terms of using it, sometimes it can be a little bit tricky. The first thing to think about is that whole part where I have to have two words in front of the name of my variable when I'm declaring it. That enum days, for example, right? Enum days day, right? This is what we currently have when we want to create a new variable that can store a day, and it's just a little bit awkward. So one thing we can do actually is use typedef to fix that. So I can have this following typedef code down here, typedef enum days, and what that's actually doing is it's saying, okay, I'm going to create a new type called days, uppercase D there, and behind the scenes that will mimic or look like or be an alias of enum days, right? So in the future, after I've run that line, then I can create my new variable like this, days now equal Monday, right? I don't have to have that enum in front of that word days anymore because I've used typedef to create a completely new type. Well, not completely new. Create a new type which has a simpler name based on on what was defined by that enumeration up top, based on this line over here, which declared the day's enumeration. So it makes things a lot simpler. So you'll see people do that reasonably often, is use typedef basically to clean up their type declarations a little bit. So some final thoughts about enumerations in C. Let's see, we have that final example down here. So you notice we have two variables, days, x equal Monday, y equal Friday, and you can see there's a loop in there. Maybe the observation is just a little bit here. Well, the first observation is a little bit here. X++. So what does that mean? Well, that means actually, because this code will compile, is that we're allowed to manipulate variables that are enumeration type just like an integer, right? Because in C, they're just ints behind the scenes. So we're actually allowed to do stuff like x++ or x minus even. Now, what will happen when you write code like that is that it's going to transparently change the enumeration value inside. So if I have, for example, x equal Monday and I do x plus plus, what will happen is x will become Tuesday. Over here we have the sequence, right, this set of days, right, and we said, okay, Sunday's 0, and then, if it starts at 0, then it'll count up, right, so that means that Monday is, 1, Tuesday is 2, Wednesday is 3, and so on. Yeah, this mouse isn't working too well. Because they're set up like that, because they're just set up as numbers behind the scenes, that means when I do my manipulation of a variable that contains enumeration, I can actually change what it is. Now, if you're in another language like Java, you can't do that. You can't go to an enumeration variable and do plus plus, because there is no sense that, there's a number behind the scenes. It's just an artifact in C because really they're just integers. In Java, there's basically no relationship. There's no ordering between the elements in enumeration. Here there is because of that integer behind the scenes. So this can be a little bit problematic. Let's look at that last question there, the last bullet point. What is the value of x after x plus plus is executed if x was Saturday before? Well, in that case, right, you can think, okay, I have my variable x of type days. It's originally Saturday. Saturday is going to be set equal to 6 initially. What happens if I do an x plus plus on it? Well, all of a sudden that value behind the scenes at 6 becomes a 7. So you've somehow gotten out of your set of enumeration values. Now you have a variable that contains the number 7, but 7 doesn't map to any of the actual days of the week. So that is a potential problem. So in general, we have to be careful when we use enumeration values that we don't do that. What we want to do, right, is avoid using the direct manipulation of an enumeration, right, doing plus, plus, or minus, minus, and really just do, equal to, Monday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever is coming from that enumeration, right? Stay in terms of those keywords that are provided by your declaration of the enum, not in terms of, it's an integer behind the scenes. Let's see, to answer that second to last bullet point, we actually kind of skipped over a little bit. To answer this one real quick, basically what that's saying is, hey, what's the final value of x if this code runs? Well, in this case, we can actually compare variables that are of enumeration type because they're ints, right? Ints are comparable. So this is actually going to be basically a loop that goes day by day, starting with Monday, and then goes Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And once it gets to that Friday, then it'll stop because then x and y are the same thing, and this loop will exit out. So it's actually kind of a nice way to scroll through kind of a subset of a list of things, assuming that they're in the proper order that you want. Although, again, you have to be careful because, what happens if I go out of bounds? If I go to an integer that doesn't correspond to an actual enum value, then I'm in trouble. All right, so that's what we got for enumerations. Again, they're a way to specify a set of things, and because this is C, we have to just be careful that we don't manipulate them the wrong way because they can be treated like integers, and that can give us unexpected results.